Right. Good afternoon, everybody. So as we're kind of letting everybody come on, just want to introduce myself. My name is Megan Elwood. I am the project manager of technology and life science here at Partnership Gwinnett. So just want to say thank you guys for joining in today's webinar. Very exciting topic. For anyone who's not familiar with who Partnership Gwinnett is, we are the economic development and marketing arm for the county. Our team, essentially we wake up every day to recruit, retain, and expand companies and businesses in Gwinnett County. And we have a great speaker. Speaking of Gwinnett County, we have one of our own local companies, which I will go over before I introduce him. But first I want to go over a couple housekeeping items, as I'm sure everybody has heard before. But first, you'll notice the chat feature. It has been disabled for the meeting. We will capture all of your questions. So if you have a question, use the Q&A feature at the bottom. And then what we'll do is throughout the session, we'll reserve time at the end to take some of those questions and answers. Steve may take a couple throughout the webinar. So it'll kind of just be a very informal process, but nonetheless, we will get all of your answers, all your questions answered. Second, the webinar is being recorded, so we will share everything with you guys and some additional resources in a follow-up email from us following the webinar. So at this time, I would like to thank our sponsors, Georgia Power, Gwinnett Technical College, and Lucky. And at this time, Melvin, I will throw it over to you to say a few words on behalf of Gwinnett Technical College.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. And thank you all for giving us this opportunity to sponsor what I consider a unique opportunity as we go into uncharted territories. Gwinnett Technical College, I'm Vice President of Economic Development, and I look forward to the discussion today between all the participants here, IoT, and how do we overcome this crisis. As I said before, we're in uncharted territory. But I want you to know that Gwinnett Technical College is here to offer the resources that we have available to get our businesses and industry back on the road to recovery and provide employees for these businesses to employ. Once again, thank you so much. On behalf of Dr. Cannon and the entire Gwinnett Technical College staff, I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you so much. So thank you again to all of our sponsors. And with that being said, I will now hand it over to Steve Latham, the founder and CEO of Banyan Hills Technologies. Steve?
Great, thank you, Megan. Let me share my screen here. And just if, Megan, if you don't mind confirming that you can see it, that'll allow me to, I can jump in.
Yes, yep, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, Megan, for the introduction, and to Partnership Gwinnett for the opportunity to talk about such an important topic at such an interesting time. And just want to say thanks to everybody for carving out time today to spend with us to get into some of the content that we've developed. And also want to thank the team at Banyan for all of the hard work that you guys are putting into to building the product and the services that are having such a tremendous impact at this time. So quick introduction, so again, my name's Steve Latham. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Banyan Hills Technologies. We're based out of Gwinnett, out of Duluth. We are an Internet of Things company. And so I will get into the Internet of Things and a definition around what IoT is. Also, we'll talk about some of the pandemic and the resulting impact that the pandemic is having, especially around technology, and then how IoT is being applied to help solve some of the challenges that the pandemic has created. And then I'll use the opportunity to show you a little bit more about how Banyan is helping in this regard with our software platform, and I'll show you the platform and talk about a few examples of where we've helped out. But to start things off, I will jump in just with a definition around what the Internet of Things is. And I realize we have a fairly diverse crowd on the phone with us today. So we have everything ranging from technical to people trying to learn about IoT and what its applications can be. So I just want to spend a second talking about breaking what IoT is. So the Internet of Things is, a high-level definition, is all about connecting device-based systems to the Internet for the benefits of centralized visibility, management, and control. And it's a mouthful, but I'll start to break that down even a little further here. And so to do that, I'll just talk about what are the ingredients of an effective IoT solution. So I'll talk you through that. And then we'll look at some real world examples that I think will help bridge the gap for anyone that's less familiar with what IoT is. So to start that, typically we have, any physical premise or property is made up of technology that ranges in complexity, but primarily hardware and device systems that help us operate a facility or a premise. And the device mix can be very dynamic and diverse. You can have everything from point of sale systems to cooling systems to pest control systems. And then you can have business systems that are things like customer relationship management systems, ERP, financial accounting systems. But all of this technology is designed to help operate properties. And when we talk about IoT, it starts with those device-based systems, whether it's a hardware device or a software device. What IoT is about is waking that device up through a connection to the Internet. And typically that happens, some devices, if you think of like a self-service kiosk, for example, that kiosk might do transactions like a DVD rental, or it might be a wayfinding kiosk to help you navigate a property like an airport. That kiosk might actually have a router inside of it that initiates and maintains a connection to the Internet so that the kiosk can communicate and provide data about what's happening locally to that machine. And then other systems today just don't have a way to communicate. And so part of an IoT implementation is about looking at the profile of that hardware device, figuring out how to connect it first to a gateway so that it can connect to the Internet or a router, and then to basically instrument that device so that we can start to observe events or data that are happening locally on that device. And then once the device is connected to the Internet, all of the traffic and the data that's captured on that device is then routed to an IoT platform. And an IoT platform that resides over the top of these devices that it's managing is really, at its simplest level, is all about receiving that data, processing that data, and then storing that data in a large database. So once we store all of that data, then the value is pulled out of the IoT solution through business applications. And so that can come in the forms of monitoring, remote monitoring platforms. It could be ticketing systems where we're taking data from these devices and we're filling out tickets or work orders associated with the management of those devices. But the business applications are what really produce the business and user value to whoever that user might be. And examples of applications like I just mentioned could be the more common, like monitoring or reporting analytics platforms, but also automation platforms. And so we'll get into some of those examples today. But when you think about IoT, think about taking a device, instrumenting that device so that it can connect to the Internet for the benefits of sending data over the Internet to a platform that's responsible for receiving, processing, and storing that data, and then making that data and the management of these devices available through a collection or a catalog of business applications that then provide the value to the businesses or the users that are subscribing to it. And the truth is that Banyan's a company that we've been around for 7 years, and Banyan's been focused on building IoT technology, a software platform, and I'll show you that today, but also in consulting in this space and providing professional services. And one of the things over the last 7 years that we've noticed is that while IoT definitely has positive business impact and value associated with it, the adoption of the technology has been maturing differently and at different paces for virtually all industries. Some industries are maturing faster than others, but the one thing that's undisputed is that it's showing up everywhere. We see it in smart city implementations, home automation, retail, facility management, healthcare, especially now, and fitness, smart transportation, education, financial services, life security and safety, and on and on and on. It's undisputed that IoT is on the rise, and the adoption of it is happening quickly. And just to try to bridge the gap, if you're sort of wondering, well, yeah, help me translate that into brands or solutions that I know. Here's some examples. Your Nest thermostat, where you can remotely control the temperature of your home via your mobile phone. That's an IoT product. Or Tesla, being able to manage and track and perform software updates on your car to change the performance profile. Redbox, the solution to rent DVD. All of these brands represent, these are probably most of the people on the phone have at least exposure to one or many of these brands, but this is where the adoption of IoT is showing up in brands and solutions that we can understand. So when we start to talk about the pandemic and the impact that CV-19 has had, I like to start by saying it feels to me like I've just expanded my vocabulary over the last 60, 90 days. There are new terms that have come up that all of us, I think, we're aware of them now, but probably didn't have much exposure to prior to this all unfolding. Concepts like social distancing, shelter in place, self-quarantine, stay-at-home order, self-isolation. These are things that, as evident by us all being on the phone here together through a Zoom conference, this is kind of our new reality. These terms are not only familiar to us, but they're very important in making sure that we're maintaining the safety and health and the well-being of our families, our businesses, and all individuals. But there's a common theme here that I think is important to us to pay attention to, is that all of them sort of derive into this concept of, and they're leading to, the remote nature of interaction and operation. And so going back to, if I think about, okay, we need to socially distance ourselves, or we need to self-quarantine and isolate contact, they're all sort of suggesting that in order to maintain continuity in our operations and in the services that we provide, we're going to need to embrace some form of remote connectivity, visibility, management, and control. And just going back to the definition around IoT, where it's all about connecting device systems to the internet so that we can experience the benefits of centralized management and control, you can see where this is going. And some of the evidence is also undisputed. I love the fact we're all on a Zoom conference call, and I'm sure that everybody that's on the line, we can all empathize with one another that we're spending more time now with solutions like Microsoft Teams than we ever imagined we would be. Back-to-back meetings where we're leveraging technology that connects us remotely. So these numbers are staggering. I look at these numbers, and this is direct from Microsoft about Microsoft Teams, where March 12th, which was sort of, everybody was exposed to the coronavirus. I think we were all scratching our heads wondering, okay, how real, what's the impact going to be? What Microsoft was saying and what they were tracking was approximately 560 million minutes per day were spent on using Microsoft Teams. And then in a week, you can see that it jumped to 900 million minutes per day. And then by the end of March, we are at 2.7 billion minutes per day were spent on Microsoft Teams interacting with one another. And so I say that just to point out that this idea that the pandemic has set in, and that technology is being embraced and leveraged to support us, I think that the data is suggesting that it's evident, it's impactful, and it's here. I'd like to start to understand, okay, what are the other technology trends that are happening, and then what's the impact going to look like in the future? And this chart here, I also think is very revealing and something that we can all relate to. Trust Radius produced this metric that talks about, as of April 6, talk about the top rising software categories. And you'll notice that each of the ones described, the growth rate has been over 200%, roughly. And we're talking about telemedicine, electronic signature, web conferencing, mobile development, antivirus, remote desktop, video platforms, webinar, web portal, and live chat. These are all, the thing that stands out to me here, one is this probably, the percentages are interesting because it suggests that the growth has been exponential. But it also, I don't think it surprises us. I don't think, when we talk about something like remote desktop or video platforms or webinars like we're on today, we're all experiencing that. And so I think we can all relate, and we expected some spike in growth. This feels like a reaction to the pandemic and us all having to accommodate these sort of certainly near-term impact. But what does this mean for the future? This is a reaction, but in the future, what can we expect? So I think here's some really important points that we just need to think about. One is, we are going to reactivate. We are already seeing certainly in Georgia, but we're also seeing more broadly that businesses are reopening, and the world's coming back to life, for lack of a better term. And despite even some of the risk with that, the engine is starting to fire back up in some of these industries. But reactivating those businesses and then complying with what certainly is going to be a new normal will require a different spike in technologies. How are we going to reopen in a way that promotes the safety and the well-being that gives consumers the confidence to travel into a retail experience, for example? And I think, so while I expect these things to continue to be there, all of the spike in growth that we've seen, what I think that we'll see going forward is a movement towards a spike in technology that help us digitally reactivate, digitally comply with new emerging standards, and to adapt to those standards as they're being created, but then also to digitally monitor and manage everything that's used to maintain these environments. Also, I think the idea of remote and smart service is only going to further explode. The idea that we can provide service to environments like healthcare, hospitals, and we need to provide service of that equipment. We need to make sure that all of those systems are functional. But how are we going to do that while also trying to comply with social distancing standards and new health and regulatory requirements that require us to maintain that safety? I think we're going to have smarter and smarter visibility into what those systems are inside of these facilities so that we can remotely monitor, manage, and report on them. Also, contactless enablement. We're already seeing this, and I'll talk about this here in another slide or two. The idea that even payment processing, I think we're seeing a surge of contactless payments as a response to the concern of touching user interfaces or the point of sale, for example. This idea that we can do payments without actually physically contact. We can have an interaction with a transactional machine without physically touching it. Voice, contactless. These, I think we can see and expect to see a rise in those technologies. Digital tracking and automation. We're already seeing this, and I'll give some more examples here in a moment, but the idea that you've got assets that move through a supply chain, and we may not be able to always have and maintain the physical presence that historically we've had there to maintain the visibility and to maintain the compliance with the standards associated with monitoring and managing those assets. So how can we introduce technology like the Internet of Things to connect to and track those assets as they go through supply chain? And then as we're tracking them and as events happen and things that we need to respond to, how can we automate our response instead of having to physically be there to address it? Next, real-time and responsive analytics. This is something we deal with in our business all the time. I think the demand for this is going to continue to go up, And I think these last two really can be combined. You know, the idea that we might have industries or systems, businesses that are managing many properties, collecting miles and miles of data and processing them through a platform that can give real-time visibility into what's happening inside of these facilities and then respond quickly through analytics. I think the idea that machines can be leveraged to look at that data, look at patterns in that data, draw conclusions, and draw human intervention in when needed. I think all of this, you know, the impact of a pandemic and CV-19 are clearly going to give rise to these technologies. Some examples. So, you know, clearly what I've talked about so far, when you look at some of these trends and talk about our definition of the Internet of Things and the ingredients of an Internet of Things system, our solution, IoT is going to play an important role in each of these, in helping businesses reactivate, helping maintain connectivity for visibility, helping manage these devices remotely, maintaining uptime of, you know, mission critical systems. I think it's fairly obvious that at least to us, that trend is going to continue to rise. And so we're starting to see, I just threw out a couple of examples here, but if you spend a little time kind of digging in on where is IoT being leveraged, it's showing up on an increasing frequency, which I think we can expect. I think coming out of this, we're going to see the velocity around the adoption of IoT continue to increase. A couple that I think that we've been getting closer to recently in the last couple of weeks. There's been in the entertainment and gaming space, and also in hospitality, you're noticing that some of these operators are releasing health and safety standards. And a couple that caught our attention and that have resulted in some attention, especially with regards to IoT being spent here, are the Sands, the Las Vegas Sands, also the Wynn. They have released a set of standards that you can go pick up. In fact, when you get these materials, you can drill into these links and get some information on this that suggests that they're going to be heavily relying on technology to reactivate their business. And you know, some of that comes in the form of front and back of house digital signage. So imagine digital screens that sit at the front of a retail or hospitality environment or a casino that are telling the consumers or the users that are walking into these spaces what they're doing from a safety standpoint, what they should expect in their own experience inside of these environments, and trying to communicate to their consumer base or their customer base about what it's going to mean to be safe inside of these properties. And by the way, these standards, I think we're all used to this by now, they're going to change. Not weekly, they're going to change daily. And so the idea that the communication will be done digitally as opposed to manually will mean that we can change the content that's being presented to consumers real time. Now, IoT is going to be really important, not only in helping push that content by connecting to digital signs that make up these properties, but also monitoring and managing these signs to make sure that they're available, make sure that the information that's needed to be presented is showing up when it's supposed to show up. All of that is an example of where IoT is having an impact. Then you've got, if you read these, some of the materials, you'll see that personal protective equipment, we're sort of used now, we're used to the masks that we're needing to wear, but I think we're going to see this continue to evolve. For staff, we need to make sure that the inventory that is used to support PPE, personal protective equipment, the inventory is available for the staff at the time that they need it. And so tracking that asset, those assets, making sure that it's available, making sure that people are actually wearing it and that we're complying to those standards is becoming increasingly important. Regulatory compliance, I think we've talked a lot about this. These standards are changing frequently. I think our understanding of what CV-19 is and the long-term effects, that will continue to evolve. And so we have to have the adaptability to comply with those standards. Again, meaning that digital will certainly help us there. Thermal cameras, I think everybody's seen this. This has been really interesting to watch, but the thermal cameras that are monitoring temperature of staff, but also of customers that are traveling through an experience. We are actively monitoring thermal cameras to detect risk. And when those risks are detected, there are responses that have to be triggered in order to go mitigate the threat. And so not only do the cameras have to be managed, these cameras have to be on, they have to be serviced, they have to be maintained, but then the act of the camera catching something has to trigger a response. And so I'll show you some of how IoT solves that, but just keep that in mind. And then clearly there's standards around filtration and HVAC service that have to be embraced in order to make sure, especially with CV-19 being a respiratory-based virus, there are standards that have to be met in order to make sure that the air is clean and healthy and that we're mitigating risk. So I love, and by the way, these, I've put a couple of brands here, but this is not unique to these brands. Any hospitality, hotel, restaurants, they're having to understand this landscape, understand the changing standards, and then develop solutions that help them solve for it. Over here in healthcare, healthcare has obviously been a very hot space. We've seen AliveCore and Xenix in particular have a couple of solutions. AliveCore builds, and again, all this information is available for you, but they build things like digital stethoscopes or thermometers that will track your temperature and then report it to a backend, another example of an IoT solution. And then Xenix has autonomous robots that will travel into a space and then use ultraviolet to help clean the space, the air. And so very cool solution here. You can see some of what they're doing in the spaces that they operate. And talk about expanding our vocabulary. I was on a call this morning actually where we talked about the concept of contact tracing. And for those of you who don't know what contact tracing is, this is a real hot emerging space where the idea is that we are tracking location of individuals, and including all the way down to proximity to each other. And we are monitoring how long these individuals are close to one another so that we can identify that as a potential contact risk. And then if there's an individual that actually has a health hazard, where there's a risk, the idea behind contact tracing is being able to understand where there's been potentially dangerous contact and then the ripple effect that has to anyone that's been within proximity of that contact, that individual. And so really interesting, we've been contacted about some of the solutions that we have around tracking real-time location of individuals, and through things like mobile devices or through smart badge technology, and then just trying to not expose the individual, for example, but just to track who's close to whom, and then where are their potential health hazards. I mentioned digital stethoscope, connected thermometers, remote patient monitoring. I think telemedicine, most people are now familiar with telemedicine and what we can do there. And then I mentioned the autonomous cleaning robot through Xenix. So let me just talk for a second about Banyan and where we fit into this equation. So Banyan, as I mentioned earlier, there's really two primary purposes of Banyan. Most fundamental to the company is a software platform. It's an Internet of Things software platform called Canopy. And Canopy is a platform that we've taken to market to address a lot of what we talked about on subsequent slides. The other part of our business, and we've taken that product to market and we sell into a range of industries for some of the value proposition that we discussed earlier. In addition to that, we have a services part of our business that is focused on all things associated with Canopy. So implementing Canopy for our customers, configuring it for the particular needs of the customer we're supporting or the partner, and then integrated it into their other business systems so that their other business systems can reap the value of an IoT solution. And also to help consult and to help think through what are the business problems that you're having today, how can IoT be applied to produce some value. And so when we think about the chart that I described earlier around where Canopy fits in, Canopy is focused on, we have a way to help, using software, to help an operator connect to the devices that might make up their premise. So we have software that can be installed on those devices, or we have an integration architecture that allows us to integrate with these devices so that once they become connected to the internet, they're transmitting the data, or they're receiving data from the IoT platform that are important for managing them. The second part of it is we have a proprietary engine that we've built that meets this middle requirement. So we have software that is responsible for receiving data from all of the devices that can connect up over the internet to the enterprise platform. So we receive it, we process it, and then we store it all in a data warehouse that then can be used to drive business value. And so first part is connecting to the device. Second part is once those devices are broadcasting data, we're responsible for processing, reacting, and storing that data into an enterprise data warehouse. Then, and most important probably, is then we have to, it's all about what is the value that once these systems are connected, how are our customers and our partners using it to make use of it. I'll show you today, I'll show you the product, our product, so that you can visually see it, but think about, we've built a management console that provides access to a range of business applications that helps our customers use IoT to service any connected devices. So we can receive data for reporting and analytics, but then we can also issue commands that go back down to those devices to do things like take a screenshot, pull a log file, that sort of thing. In addition to that, though, we don't always have to deploy our business applications. Some customers are just interested in just using this part of our technology. If you can help us connect the devices and then process the data and then push that data to your own business applications, like a point of sale system or an incident management system, a customer relationship management system, then that's fine. We leverage IoT to connect to the devices and process their data, and then make that data available to applications or business systems that you might be already be leveraging within your own ecosystem. So that's the role that Canopy plays for our customers today. And so what I think I'll do here is let me show you the product, and let me I'll mention this about the product. Actually tonight, we've been focused for a long time now. It feels like forever, on building the next generation version of our user interface and our platform that that our customers and partners are using. And actually overnight tonight, we're releasing the new version of the platform to our customer base in beta form, so that they can start to toggle between their existing solution and the new version. And over the past couple months, we've really tried to use this window being in the pandemic as an opportunity to try to make some of the things that we've been working on available faster for our customers and partners, so that they can go solve these problems. And so what I'm about to show you is actually the new version of the product. So I'm going to drag this across and expand this. And there's a lot of data here, so I'll travel through this relatively fast here. What this represents is the user interface that customers that are using our technology can log into, and they can see, for example, this is a list of locations that has devices that are connected to this platform. And you can see we're monitoring real-time metrics about the health of these connected devices. And you can see the specifics of these connections if I just hover over some of these key performance indicators, or I can even drill into these and you can see some of the visualizations of the data. You can travel through and do various reports to understand the trends that are happening for any of these locations. You can view these views. So if you're managing, imagine hospitals, and you're managing a particular device inside of hospitals, you can look at a map like this and you can drill into areas that might be having particular problems or challenges so that you can provide the remote visibility into what's happening there, but also the remote servicing of that. And remote servicing, I'll show you some of that as well. Let me just click through. For any one of these connected locations or devices, you can initiate actions from the console that then can be sent back down to those connected systems to try to recover them without physically needing to be there. And that's so important. If you think about the example in healthcare, we've got a customer in healthcare, for example, that has 6,000 machines deployed in approximately 600 hospitals throughout the country, where now getting access to those properties and physically being there means something different than it did a couple of months ago with the pandemic. The ability to do something as simple as a software upgrade for those systems inside of hospitals, for example, can be done via a console like this, as opposed to physically needing to be in front of the machine to perform that software update. And then there's capabilities, automation capabilities in the product. I'll just zoom in here, fly through this relatively quick to give you a sense of our capabilities. But any event or any action that occurs on one of these connected devices can trigger a reaction. So it could be that if there's a threat to a facility, then trigger an emergency response situation. And so what this workflow here is telling us is that a key performance indicator that we're monitoring goes red. So wait for 2 days and then send an email with an alert to a defined email list. This level of automation is so important when we're trying to maintain physical distance and we're working from places like we are today from home. So automation is a key tenet to the solution. And then giving our customers rich visualizations like this, where they can see, once you start to connect all these devices together, being able to see these devices through dashboards that tell you key trends and where you can make important observations about your operation are really important. So there we go. Just a couple other visualizations here as I try to wrap up the demonstration of Canopy. So beyond that, let me just talk, I want to talk for a second about a couple of examples where we've noticed that our product and services are making an impact, just to help people get maybe some exposure to the solution, the technology, Banyan and Canopy, and then also maybe to get your wheels spinning. We have a customer that happens to be in the commercial refrigeration and cold storage industry, and they manufacture the industrial equipment that pumps cool air and freezing air into some of the largest facilities in the country. And those facilities right now are under high pressure and high demand for receiving inventory, storing inventory, and then pushing that inventory through our supply chain into consumers' hands. And the challenge is with those facilities that are leveraging something like a cooling solution or a freezer, is energy costs are paramount. That's, if you look at their P&L, energy is at the top of the list. And so maintaining strong, good visibility into your energy consumption relative to the cost of that energy is something that these operators care about dramatically. Also, any failure of that cooling equipment, any failure is catastrophic. It could mean fatalities. It could also mean perishable inventory goes bad, affecting the supply chain, but also impacting millions of dollars of inventory. And we were brought in to connect those control systems that are responsible for managing the equipment, the cooling equipment in these facilities, connect them to Canopy so that we could provide central access to the data, so that facility operators, especially in times when they're having a hard time getting on premise to manage these properties, they can have the data at their hands, not just for an isolated facility, but all of the facilities under management, so they can be reacting to real-time energy demands, real-time energy issues that are occurring, and also responding to alarms and alerts that are impacting their operation. And our customer, our partner in this space, hired us. They licensed our platform for us, and they've pushed it to market. And they chose to just double down. They chose to take Canopy and roll it out to as many facilities or many of their customers at no charge as possible, to help make sure that the supply chain was protected. Really admirable and really impactful. We've watched it roll out, and we've just seen the outpouring of feedback, positive feedback about having that visibility into the data to be able to have more efficient operations has been really, really fulfilling to watch. We've also noticed we have another customer more in the retail side of the house that has said contactless payments and the implications of new forms of payments on regulations like PCI compliance or EMV compliance. We have to support that. This customer or this partner, they deploy retail technology into these hospitality restaurants, for example, and they have watched the trend around rolling out new forms of payment like contactless, or the need to maintain visibility and operations of their equipment that's inside of these facilities as paramount, especially in a time when they can't even get access to the property. And so what they've done is they've also doubled down. They've rolled out the use of our technology, Canopy. They've rolled it out at a very fast pace. It's been almost hard to keep up with, but they're rolling it out to their customer base for the same sort of idea. Look, well, let's talk about commercials later. Let's get this out there so that we can help you reactivate your locations faster. And that's been really fulfilling for us to be a part of. So I want to make sure we've got about 17 minutes. There's one other message I just wanted to make sure I mention, and then I will jump to questions. I see one question already staged, but then I'll obviously leave a little bit of time for others. Banyan, I was so thrilled, and Megan, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to participate in this webinar and to have an opportunity to talk more about what we're seeing, what we're observing and planning for, but also the ways that we're helping our customers. It means a great deal to us that we are helping the communities in which we operate. And to that end, we want our technology to be available and helpful, especially to the communities that we operate in. And we are not immune to this thing. I will tell you that. I've many sleepless nights and lots of careful navigating the situation that we're all in. It's been difficult. I think we can all agree to that. But we are doing the best we can to embrace the change that has happened as a result of CV-19. And then the conversations that we're having with our partners and our customers are, let's collaborate, let's put our heads together, let's learn from each other about the impact that this is having. And then let's look at the incredible technology that we've built, and let's figure out how to apply it. Let's create new innovative applications of this technology to be successful. And that offer's just there. If it's not coming through loud and clear, maybe we should do another webinar next week. But we want to be partners. Certainly, we want to grow and continue to grow the platform and our success as a business. But what's most important to us right now is that we are helping. And I want to make sure that that's available to everybody on the call, certainly. You can reach us at banyanhills.com. I think my contact's going to be going out directly to everybody, so no issues with folks reaching out to me, please, directly. I think there's some additional materials that Partnership Gwinnett is going to be releasing to get our name out there and how to get in touch with us. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we are interested in becoming a part of your solutioning around this. And we do have empathy around how difficult this has been. Okay, so let me transition to some of the questions. We've got 14 minutes. Be respectful of folks' time. Let me pull this across here. Okay, I see I've got 4 stage questions, so let me try to get through some of these. Okay, the first question is, Steve mentioned several industries like financial services. Where are you finding IoT solutions in spaces like financial services? Do you have any success stories in that field? So I think I gave one example there where we're seeing the idea of contactless. This isn't a new trend, but it's an accelerated trend as a result of the pandemic. And so if you just think about what it means to roll out a contactless payment solution, from everything from integration to the point of sale to gateways to but then also compliance with standards like EMV and PCI. It takes a lot and device management. It takes a lot of work to get there. Where IoT is coming into play, I think, and where we've seen it with the one retail example that I mentioned, is that they are trying to help their customers that are adopting new forms of payment or new financial services product, let's put it that way. They are trying to help their customers get there and adhere to the regulatory requirements for things like PCI and EMV. And the truth is that if you monitor, part of those compliance standards are you have to have good security, you have to have good security, but also good reporting in place to satisfy the needs around the operation of any payment solution. And IoT, the way that our customer is using IoT is to help digitally track their use of solutions like contactless, report on and provide visibility to achieve those certifications. We've also seen just in financial services, there's been a space we've been pretty active in, for unattended devices that are out there servicing equipment that are servicing financial needs. We've seen questions around, can you connect these systems to Canopy to provide that central management and control capability? Okay, next question was, how do you provide a connected solution like Canopy in spaces like healthcare with HIPAA and financial with PCI? So we just hit on PCI a bit. And then for HIPAA, where we're talking about protecting patients' healthcare data, PHI, for example, personal healthcare information. We typically, Canopy becomes, anytime Canopy is implemented in one of these spaces, it falls within scope of making sure that Canopy is not doing something that potentially exposes data that is confidential or personal in nature. Most of the time, Canopy doesn't even go there. Canopy's looking at telemetry. It's looking for information about machines and our software solutions to provide us health information so that we can manage uptime and the availability of those solutions. So we don't look to cross the chasm and look at, Canopy is not always required for pulling in PHI or payments information that would otherwise be stored in another payment solution. That's one of the ways that we mitigate it. Now that said, when a solution like a payments company needs to integrate with Canopy, we fall within that standard, so Canopy becomes within scope and it gets evaluated under the same lens. But a lot of times in that evaluation, it's deemed as out of scope because we're not storing that information. Next question. I'm going to see, let's see. What is one policy change that could accelerate the benefits of IoT? That's a great question. I think policy change is a tough one. I think some of the things that I would look for, security is such a it's a bridge we cross in every conversation that we talk through with regards to Canopy. And I'm not suggesting that there's a policy change that needs to be made, but I will tell you philosophically, there are a set of security standards that have to be met. They're almost table stake. They're important for us to pay attention to and to mitigate in order to deploy IoT technology to help solve important problems. What I fear is sometimes is that I think we have to respect that security is always going to be an issue, that security is always going to be present and something that we have to appropriately design against. However, I don't want personally, I don't want the fear of security threats to prevent the innovation that we need to solve some of these hard problems. If we were fearful of that, digital payments would never have gotten here, and so sometimes when we get into those conversations, the conversations I have with security, we demonstrate everything we can to satisfy the checklist of compliance activities our security policies that we follow in order to maintain the integrity of our solution. But at the same time, I ask people to, you design for security threats today that tomorrow become mitigated around against the very people that are trying to break in. And so I try to be careful sometimes that security is not an excuse to prevent forward movement. Can you tell us the kind of end-to-end encryption the software has? So great question. We have piggybacks right onto security. We have gone to extreme lengths to make sure that our software does not open up security vulnerabilities for an IoT solution. Rather than take you through the group through everything that we've done, I will offer up that we have miles of documentation on this that we've had to develop and certainly to enter into commercial relationships with large organizations. Happy to take that one offline and share our security practices or policies and the way that the system's been architected to address that. Let's see here, just navigating this. Can you give us a general idea of the biggest risk associated with IoT? Not doing it? Is that a fair answer? Not embracing it? No, I think that the risk that, just to continue on the security discussion, I think that the biggest risk, I think, would be to approach leveraging IoT to help you solve important business problems without the appropriate consideration for your partner, your vendor, your software technology, your hardware technology, and to carefully make selections that give you the best chance at success, business success, while the best chance at mitigating security issues. It's a careful process, but if there are, and I see less of this now, but especially early in our journey, I can recall being compared to other IoT solutions in the market. And one of the things that, IoT for a while almost felt like a hobby, like a tinkering activity. It was showing up in ways where people were experimenting with it and doing creative things, but they weren't industrial commercial solutions. And the difference is obvious. If you go with a solution that is more of a hobbyist implementation or a tinkering exercise, and that hasn't been exercised completely, you could be entering into opening up some threats that you obviously would want to avoid. I think the right partner, the right mindset around what it takes to implement this, that's the mentality you have to go into. Do your homework there, but that the security threat could be a potential problem. Let's see, I've answered a bunch of questions. I'm just making sure that I haven't missed any. Okay, Megan, I think I'm ready to pass it back to you. I know if there's other questions that you've received, I can help answer.
No, I think I think you answered all of them. Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. That was incredible. We had a lot of really good questions, so I'm sure you'll probably receive some follow-up questions following this anyway. So, but yeah, so thank you again. Thank you so much. We're glad that everyone was able to join us today for some insight on IoT and really kind of where this is going to be taking us in the future. As a reminder, you will be receiving a follow-up email with a recording of this, as well as Steve's information and anything else you guys need. Definitely, obviously, use us. Thank you again to our sponsors, Georgia Power, Gwinnett Technical College, and Lucky. And with that being said, I want to hand it over to Brooke Perez from Georgia Power to officially close this out today.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, it totally disappeared and came back, so I hope it works okay. Anyways, thanks, Megan, and huge thanks to Partnership Gwinnett for the opportunity to host and to be a part of this conversation. I personally had the great pleasure to go and do a business visit with the Partnership Gwinnett team out to Banyan Hills and meet Steve and the team, and just so proud that this product was born here and is growing right here in Gwinnett County. For those of you who have different levels of tech savvy, what's really cool about this product is not only all of the amazing connectivity and the things that Steve mentioned, but his team really removed all the barriers that you typically see from a user experience perspective. And so it's just a really fantastic, really well-built product, and so glad to see all the ways that folks are able to leverage it in these times. Certainly something I'm very interested in seeing, and certainly in the utility business for sure, will continue to be leveraged more. So anyways, on behalf of Georgia Power, thank you so much for having us. And I'll turn it back over to you, Megan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke. Yeah, so with that being said, please remember that Partnership Gwinnett is here to support you in any way we can. If you have any questions, need additional assistance, feel free to reach out. You can email one of us. You can visit our website. It has all of our contact information on there. And with that being said, right on time, we will adjourn, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.